I like writing in cursive, but I don't read it as quick.
Oh.
I feel like... So that's fine.
It's your own fault.
But
If
I have
can't read your
but
own
my
words.
quote is in printed.
So are you going to read it faster because it's in a different script? Is that what your assertion was?
Is less squinting will be involved.
Yeah. Well, yeah, cursive is designed to make you squint at words.
Yeah.
Yes.
But it's
I
really
think
fun
it's
to
designed
write.
so children can't read it.
I like to
Yeah.
write it. It's so much more enjoyable.
Is that true?
That's my thought.
Yeah.
They're like, we have to come up with this whole other system.
Yeah, the whole spelling it out thing stops working at age like 4.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, we need to have cursive so nobody can read it except for adults who already know what words are kind of supposed to look like.
Yeah. That's probably true.
All right.
But who knows? That's for another show.
We about ready to start up? You guys ready? We feel ready.
Oh,
we need a song.
yeah, we need a song.
Our year's 361.
Yeah.
Dun,
You knew that.
Dun, dun,
Oh, shit.
Dun, 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 dun.
I say hey.
Dun, 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 dun.
I say
Dun,
hey.
dun, dun, dun,
Hey,
dun,
what's going
dun,
on?
dun,
What's
dun.
going on?
361.
Dun, dun, dun,
361. Ow.
All right. Welcome back
Get
to
all-
the Good Year podcast, my friends. It's been a while since we did one, and the last one was wonderful. It was the year 1339, and we've brought ourselves to the year 361 from there.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know about you guys, but that put me in a lot of Roman Empire. That's like... Yeah.
Yeah.
To contextualize...
That's all there was, man.
The year just... As I started getting into it, I found that it was just like kind of the peak of like as big as the Roman Empire ever got. I mean, at this point, they're essentially covering all of Britain to like Israel, and then down across like all of this, like the Northern Africa, Israel. They essentially have all of the Mediterranean at this point.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and pretty far inland, yeah.
They peaked.
Yeah. So I mean,
You said that with such like delight, with such
Yeah.
it is
man.
really when they
devilish
peaked.
joy.
I mean, like there's only like 50 years before it really starts receding, and like pretty soon after 361, it's gonna get split. I mean, it's been split a few times, but it's like a split that kind of like gets reunified under another king. But like pretty soon, it's gonna split forever, and the Western Empire will be nothing.
It's funny how it gets so big just out of like kind of like this self-view of exceptionalism and just paranoia. I'm just like, oh shit, we got to go over there too because those guys don't like us because of what we did to the first guys. Yeah.
Yeah, once they become the bully in town, you
Yeah.
got to just start taking
Well,
out
they were the
everyone else.
bully of the whole world,
Right.
so it's like, oh fuck, now we got to take the Germans out. Couldn't do that, but
Yeah,
they
fought
took pretty
the
much everyone
Germans
else out.
forever.
Yeah.
Yeah, the
Didn't
Germans became just called barbarian. I mean, they got just like that was as different as they saw themselves from the Germans.
Yeah. Well, pretty much everyone too. I mean,
Yeah, but I
they
guess
had a
when I
pretty
think of,
strict idea of like what a Roman citizen was, and
I think our picture of like barbarian, like covered in furs, like being this like hulking brute,
Yeah,
comes
for
from like
sure.
the Germanic barbarian concept.
yeah,
right?
and I think the Germans were also. It's interesting that you bring up the size difference because I think the like Northern Europeans were also like maybe like a full head taller on average than Mediterranean people,
right.
and just they were just giants.
Uh-huh.
They just saw them as like Conan the Barbarian, basically.
And they also dealt
the
with cold way better.
Yeah, the
which was
long-haired,
really- Mm-hmm.
hardy-ass giant people. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember Dan Carlin talking about them fighting naked just as like a scare tactic. And it was
Oh,
just
yeah.
like, oh, fuck, we're like getting into Germany and it's freezing compared to Sicily. Like,
Yeah.
but they're just like, oh, this bothers you?
Yeah. Well, those were the lazy Sicilian soldiers who didn't even put up a fight. They were just like, oh, I want to take lunch for 9 hours.
Well, they're just so full of pasta. How do you fight on a
So
full belly?
Yeah.
They're just fucking drunk.
Yeah. They're like, I can only drink wine and I can only eat spaghetti. I am useless.
They weren't counting their carbs.
Never will be.
They're Carbs. So we like to dabble in a little bit of light racism in this show, and last episode was pretty heavy on Bulgarian racism, and I'd just like to roll out the carpet for the Sicilians in the
Sicilian
audience.
racism.
You are lazy, spineless people, and all you do is eat.
But you're white, so fuck you.
Yeah.
Well, here's the thing: the Roman Empire took all these other cultures and they mixed them together in a big old soup, and they used it to conquer other people.
Mm-hmm.
The soup they used in your metaphor.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because their
What
army,
they
by
feed
the
it
end
to?
of the Roman Empire, most of their army was mercenaries, and it was Germans, and it was not even that many Romans.
most
it
of
was Germans, Bulgarians, all these others, and they're like all fighting as
I like
mercenaries.
that we will always point to Zach when we say Bulgarians now.
I'm not.
I want to convince. I want it to be understood that you are Bulgarian.
I'm not Bulgarian.
I'm pretty sure
I'm Polish.
you're just denying that now that you don't want to tell everyone that you're Bulgarian.
No, we know.
Our listening audience at home
we
is
know-
going to
we
be
know
pretty
Bulgarians.
suspicious of your denials here.
We know Bulgarians. They're animals. They look nothing
Wow.
like me. Yeah.
Self-hating
Okay.
Bulgarian.
Well, there goes one country.
Oh, we lost all our listeners in
Oh, no.
Bulgaria.
Well, we already lost all of what was it, Belize that we shat on at one point in one of the episodes.
I don't even remember.
There was some
Like,
random.
fuck Belize.
There was, I think it was you again.
Hey guys, let's be real. Fuck that country. Fuck.
I mean, I wasn't too keen on China. You probably shouldn't talk about China.
You should talk about China in front of Sean.
I bring up Chinese history and it just gets you all triggered.
Not really. It was
Like,
little
oh,
bit.
the Chinese are so amazing.
So
Romans are great.
So wait, you're saying that Romans are like this melting pot of like a bunch of different cultures? 'cause
At least their
Rome-
military. Well, they were.
Well,
And their
Rome is
military was an example of that, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, everyone went to Rome.
Uh-huh.
And it didn't matter who you were. You wanted to become Roman. It was just like an idea. It wasn't really an ethnicity.
So do you have any concept of when Rome like makes it to like the Holy Land? Do you know when they make it to like Jerusalem and Israel and all that?
Pretty early.
I know.
Early.
Pretty early.
I know,
in,
like BC 70 is when they first like start killing Jews. I think.
Huh.
I think the first like
Oh, I guess the Christ story has to happen before like
before he's born.
before like, or the Christ story has to happen after the Romans make it to Israel, of course. So it's definitely before zero.
The Romans make it to Israel, I think, when they're still a republic. I
Whoa.
think they pretty much control the Mediterranean by the time, like all of the periphery of the Mediterranean by the time the empire is declared.
Uh-huh.
So it's already like, I mean, that's a big motivator for the switch, is it was already too big to govern in a truly republican way. But what are we watching?
It's, I don't
Sorry,
know,
I like
just a
I
bunch
like
of-
that. I like the background noise, but I found that I was like, even out of the corner of my eye, I found this like,
Yeah, it's really intense.
Yeah, it's super intense.
It's like, oh, is that like a video game movie
know.
or something?
I'm gonna just cut this, and I'm gonna find.
No, it's good.
That game's crazy. Have you ever seen that game, Sean? Rise, Son of Rome.
No.
It's an Xbox One game. Just, I thought it was gonna be really like good, and it was in some ways, but it's just like the most clumsy hodgepodge of like just like archetypes from Roman history. Like in the final boss battle,
Oh,
there's
that's
like
dumb.
where the barbarians are essentially sacking Rome. Your character is a Roman legionary or a centurion, and you have to fight the barbarians, and it's like it's like Boudica on a war elephant.
What the fuck?
And like this
Not-
this Hannibal-ish character, and then like a blue picked guy.
It's like
And-
it's like 1,000 years of like
Of
history
history all condensed into one
and
battle.
3 main bad guys.
Yeah, Boudica on the elephant, I think, is my favorite. This
There's no
red-haired.
elephants in England.
Yeah. I could tell you.
I would love to see the British deal with elephants in their land. I feel like them dealing with any sort of wildlife is inconceivable of just like other than being like, aha, the hunt.
It's just a picture of a fox hunt, and they're all on fucking elephants.
Yeah.
like big, like orientalized, like elephants with like all this crazy shit on.
Yeah. I just can't picture like a British man on tour or like on vacation getting to like Yellowstone and seeing the bison and being like, oh, what beautiful animals. They're always just like, aha!
All right, we just lost Britain. The Goodyear podcast, we're inspiring all kinds of obscure white on white racism.
Well, they still got the hedgehogs.
Yeah. For medicine, you mean?
Yeah, they render
Yeah.
grease from the hedgehogs. Yeah.
And they could have.
No, that's just what they eat, and we're like hedgehog grease and chicken livers on toast. Why do they put shit on
They're
toast?
not known for their food.
They're not.
It's like,
One of the things I keep hearing, like,
If anyone wants to bring us to Britain, though, to do this podcast, though, please do let us know.
English breakfast is like burnt toast, burnt eggs, and then like dry sausage.
Uh-huh.
That's an English breakfast.
Yeah.
it all has to be burnt,
Kind of, yeah. Very dry and
Uh-huh.
left in the sun.
just left out. That's part of the prep. You just leave it out a little too long.
Hey, I mean, culture's culture.
There's a restaurant in Holyoke. Oh shit.
Rohan.
There's a restaurant in Holyoke that does Irish breakfast, and it's what you describe, except it's got rashers and beans and tomatoes, which is actually pretty good. Yeah.
You didn't
Let's get
sell
back
it
on
well.
track
Fried
talking about
tomatoes.
Rome.
No.
Because we're going to talking about Holyoke Polish breakfast. We're going to just get deeper
You
and
weren't
deeper.
even paying attention. I said
I wasn't.
Irish breakfast.
Whatever.
Wow.
Yeah. What an asshole.
Sorry, Bulgarian breakfast.
Whoa, whoa, whoa.
Whoa.
Take it away, host.
Well, in... Fuck
What,
you.
was that mean?
No.
I'm just, I made it mean by cracking up at it. Brian, you have authority.
One day you'll see that this is the hardest job.
What a knee slapper that is.
Yeah.
I do everything I can to take your authority away. By the way,
Yes.
see, he's still not talking. What about Rome?
Well, all right.
Tell us.
So we were talking about it being this eclectic group of nations, and it's a conglomerate. We're trying to, and that they got to the Holy Land, like far before this time. They've been there forever, right?
Yeah.
And so there's this like
Yeah. At
eclectic,
least 400 years.
you
at
know,
least.
yeah. There's this eclectic mix of like by 361, Christianity is becoming bigger and bigger. Judaism has been around, but they're always a minority, right? Like Jews never have any sort of dominance.
They are a
in-
minority, yeah.
Like, and then there's the ancient gods. You know, there's like the Roman gods of. I know them as Greek gods a little better, but they're all the same gods. They're just different, right? Zeus is Jupiter.
Yeah, all that stuff, yeah.
Is that all that? Do you guys know? Did you look into Zach? I know you looked into old Christianity. Did you look into the ancient gods at all, or do you know anything about the Roman gods?
What do you want to know?
Like who's how is it structured? I'm somewhat familiar with the Greeks. Do you know?
It's basically it's the same thing. It was very so the Latins, who are the Romans, the ancient Latins adopted. If you look at where Rome is settled in Italy, southern Italy and Sicily were all Greek city-states dating back to before Alexander. And then when the Romans popped up, so they were surrounded on one side by heavily Hellenized, like old-ass nations.
Hellenized
and then
means what? To
Greek.
To be Greek.
Yeah, to be Greek. Yeah, baby.
Thank you.
So on their south, they have, these incredibly Hellenized, like golden age Alexandrian civilization. And then to the north, they have the Etruscans, who are like sort of Greek-ish. And so first they adopt some Etruscan gods, and then it basically, with the conquest of southern Italy, starts to become fashionable to import Greek culture.
Huh.
So really, it's through kind of a fascination with Greek religious art that they start bringing these gods into practice, because they start like importing, religious art from Greece, and then they're like, oh, who are these people? Oh,
Yeah.
that's Zeus. Oh, we'll just call him something Etruscan / Latin instead.
It's interesting to think about the world. Like, I feel like we think of or like the studied assumption of Rome is that it's based out of Italy. But at this point in the world, like, Rome is really based out of Constantinople. Like, the Eastern Roman Empire doesn't fall in 50 years beyond the time we're talking about, and sticks around for another 1,000 years. It's like the solid area where they're actually speaking Greek on a day-to-day, whereas in the West they're speaking Latin. And like, knowing Greek was like this kind of like fashionable thing to have in Constantinople, but like they didn't actually speak Latin on the East.
About why it didn't fall. Think about what is in the Eastern Mediterranean versus what is in the West. That's Alexander's empire. Those cities are thousands of years old. Those societies are even older, and they have all the money in the world. The West is like Rome, and Rome is even in that sphere, I would argue, because it's like mid-coast Italy. It's like pretty close to Africa in some way. And then it's like, but all their provinces are just like dirty Gallic provinces. That
It's funny to think of
are
France
just,
as
like,
the
super-
frontier.
Yeah, France is the
Gaul
frontier
is
of
this,
the world.
like, yeah.
So they kind of have, it would be like, it's sort of like, in contemporary America, coast versus middle. It's like France and Iberia are like middle Rome, and the East is just the rich intellectual coasts.
So around this time, there's a lot of unification that's trying to happen. I looked into the Constantine family. So Constantine the Great is like this guy who I'd kind of heard about, but I didn't really know who he was until I got into it. And it's, he's remembered by history because he's the first guy who's like really kind of favorable to the Christians, right? And like,
Is that why he's called the Great? Because of his reforms?
no, he's Saint Constantine because of his Christian reforms, but he's like every ruler that thinks they're awesome calls themselves blah, 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 the Great. And if you start a family, you kind of are the Great, it seems like, and then your sons are then Constantine the Second or whoever.
So it was a formality? It wasn't because of some victory or...
I'm assuming it's, I don't know, but my assumption from what I've seen is that it essentially indicates that you're the one that starts the empire or the family dynasty. Yeah. So in 361, Constantine's son is emperor, and he dies, and he's replaced by Julian. And so that's the event that I looked at. And so I wanted to understand like who Constantine II was and why him dying meant anything. And so Constantine is kind of the track I found myself going down. Constantine is like the first, like he's remembered as the first Christian emperor, right? But like he was never Christian in his day. Like he converted on his deathbed. Like he seemed to be like he cared about like having just a unified like empire, like having a single religion, and like it didn't seem to really matter to him who it was, as long as they like committed to one group.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it really changed the whole future of like religion too, because it happened to be a Gentile group of Christians who are like really prejudiced against Jews, and like most weren't. and they were the ones that like he like backed.
Mm-hmm.
So that kind of sucked.
Yeah, well, I'm seeing like that. So Constantine, like as emperor, he decides, or like he calls this council, where they essentially are trying to figure out this like sect disagreement, and it's called the Council of Nicaea, and there's two sects of Christianity, and they're arguing about like who Jesus was really. I mean, they're asking the question, like, is Jesus actually the Son of God? Like, is he a son and therefore like subservient to God, or is he one with God and therefore like is God?
Yeah, that's why like Eastern Orthodox is separate from Catholic because of those.
It's
ideas.
That's the first like over all of Christendom decision that's made, and it fragments into what is the Nicene tradition and the Arian tradition. And the Arian tradition kind of disappears, but it has different spin-offs, which is the group that says that Jesus is the Son of God and is therefore has a beginning. They really had this like sticking point about like Christ is forever. Like Christ was there at creation. But if Christ is the Son of God, that means he was like materialized out of, even though it's out of nothingness, that means he like had a beginning, and therefore like that was a big problem for them for some reason.
Like Dr. Manhattan from like.
Did he not have a beginning? What do you mean?
He like just kind of like formed into a fucking person out of like thin air.
Well, he was a
Was he
man
a human?
before.
Yeah.
But then he like came back in the kitchen.
Well,
So-
yeah, he was resurrected
Yeah.
in a Christ-like way.
I think the argument would be like, was Christ like
I think he rose in 3 days.
Was
Dr.
Christ
Manhattan,
blue?
just like Jesus.
Christ was white, as we all know,
Not blue.
not blue.
Okay.
Okay.
That's correct. Yeah,
Fair.
that's correct.
That's fair, I guess.
yeah. Fair.
But so he like Constantine so this makes this decision. The Council of Nicaea makes this decision that Christ is God, and anyone who says otherwise is a heretic. So this Arian cult and this guy Arius gets exiled. Anyone who decides that they're Arian is persecuted in some way. I didn't read anything about Jews being persecuted, but if Constantine seems to be like trying to go for like a singular religion, I can imagine anyone except for but the thing is like he I think he seemed to believe in both gods, and he like, because supposedly he wanted to like appease the Christian God because he thought that God was more powerful than the Jupiter god.
Mm-hmm. I
And
mean,
the-
yeah, we're looking at it from his beliefs rather than, I mean, you could look at it just from his politics,
Mm-hmm.
and he could have absolutely no opinion about the religions. He could just be like, well, I'll get more in the polls if I decide to be Christian.
In some way it seems that way, is like it's more literal than that, where it's just like that these people actually believed that gods were real, like 100% tangible, real, actually had literal consequences on the world. And so like he was scared that the Christian God would fuck with his empire if he didn't keep that God happy.
That was part of it. He also owed the greatest victory of his military career to the Christian God.
How so?
There's a story where he was going into battle. I forget why it was a significant battle. It must have been in some civil war or something.
Yeah, it was against another Roman general. Where you saw the cross in the sky.
The something bridge. What's it called?
Monkey Bridge?
The
Yeah,
monkey.
It was the
bridge.
Battle of the Monkey Bridge. It was against another
Yeah.
ancient Roman
And
general.
he saw a cross in the sun, and the cross had the Greek words, "Through me you shall conquer" or something, and in the cross. And then he told all of his legions to put the Christian God symbol on their shields.
Constantine.
Yeah, supposedly, and then they won.
Wow.
So, yeah, I mean, when you talk about, you say that he wasn't really that keen on Christianity, but then when you talk about like how literally these people perceived the religious aspect of their world, he was actually pretty nuts about the Christian God.
My impression is that he believed in the Christian God, but he was a lifelong pagan.
Right.
Like in the way that everyone was.
No,
Well, not everyone, but
there
like
were a lot of things he changed that seemed to be emotional. Like one thing he changed was he started outlawing pagan animal sacrifices, and he wrote to some Roman guy in the East Empire, or he was like governing Persia or something, and he wrote to him about why, and he said, I'd rather praise like my God on a bended knee than with like bloody, smelly sacrifices, basically. So he started outlawing pagan sacrifice, which is actually one of the most significant things to happen in 361, as I'm going to talk about.
Was outlawing pagan sacrifices?
Yeah. So we can jump right over to that.
Oh,
if
see,
you want.
That's bizarre, because my impression was that in 361, Constantine II dies, who's Arian, and then Julian is pagan. So Julian would... I would be surprised if Julian
was pagan?
That's what I read.
I don't know shit about Julian.
But so what did you read? Don't let me tell you that, because I'm just as poorly researched as you are. So
yeah.
Don't let me tell you.
We're not trying to claim any facts.
Don't
here.
let me tell you that you're wrong.
I wasn't trying to refute you on Constantine necessarily, but I think it's an interesting point because you brought up how literal people perceived the religion, and but then in the same on the same hand seemed to say that Constantine didn't take Christianity very seriously, when in fact he really did. And there's like a lot of historical evidence for him, making, I guess, what we would call emotional judgments on the issue.
I didn't mean to say he didn't take it seriously. I guess he's given credit as being the first Christian emperor, but he's really the first that embraces Christianity as legitimate. It was the impression I was given, that it's not that he loved Christianity so much, more seemingly more so that he didn't want to I don't know, actually he seemed to believe it in the way that it was literal. I don't know why I'm refuting this. I don't really know, but there's I read one sentence that's giving me this impression of that it wasn't like an act of faith in when he stopped persecuting Christians.
I mean, yeah, that's one way to look at it.
I don't know.
In a sense, it's really hard to understand the mind of a classical person, because it's just they live in a context that might as well be another planet,
right?
So it's really hard to put yourself in those shoes, and I think historians will often read into it with kind of a cynical modern view of it was all politics, it was all this. I can
see that.
But you have to see that politics, gestures of politics, and acts of faith are the same thing in the ancient world in a lot of ways. I mean, no one did anything without sacrificing animals, without consulting oracles. Everything that they did was a religious action. Because as we talked about before, in the Greek and to some extent the Roman tradition, although things had started to change by the time of the Roman gods, I mean, the Greeks, didn't believe in... They believed in the free will of people because they were, rational observers of stuff, and you can't refute that people act freely, really, empirically. You know what I mean? But at the same time, every action that you did or everything that you enjoyed was the result of some god of that specific thing. You make coffee in the morning, and you don't say, I, a human, made this coffee. You say, oh, thank the coffee god that I was able to do this. You know what I mean?
Is that similar though to our is it different
thank God
than
for
our
coffee
concept of the of saying grace before a meal?
Yeah, not really, no. I mean,
but that doesn't refute
close.
The agency of people Is like there must are
Right.
you seem to be painting in a different light, that it's not that it's like
It's similar.
I'm not just thanking God, it's like God is manifesting this for
Yeah,
me.
right. God is this thing, or
Yeah.
yeah. But yeah.
The blood of Christ.
Yeah.
That's wine.
Hey, I know. Hey,
I know something.
I know this. But no, yeah. So
Amen.
that I guess that's just the point. Is that you know all political actions are like religiously motivated in some way. So Constantine seemed to have this at least awareness of who knows why he saw that vision. You know,
Right.
but that's like what he reports as like no, like I mean everyone believes that like or is willing to believe that the God of some other place is real, but like he's just like not doing as well as your God is right now. And like the whole thing, I mean, that's what motivated like religious purges and
Yeah.
religious wars is like you almost see it like you're killing like the people who are on that God's team and making him weaker, you know? And that goes all the way back to the ancient Babylonians who, when they would go and sack like Assyrian cities, they would capture their god statues and
Yeah.
bring them back to Babylonia and be like, haha, your god lives in Babylon now.
Yeah.
Like, you're fucked.
Can you imagine? Be like, no.
Yeah,
what
and
do
people
we
would
do?
freak out. They're like, "Oh my god, they have our god!" Like that's how literal it is. But yeah, I mean, and it. So that's the thing is like, I don't think anyone was ever debating the question of like, is the Christian God real? They were like, yeah, the Christian God's real,
Yeah.
and those Christian people are crazy. And then so Constantine was at least aware of that minority in his kingdom, and then he saw what was for him evidence of that God being powerful enough to win him a battle, and he was like, oh shit, these people have a seat at the table now
Wow.
because their God is clearly real.
Yeah.
So once you start again, religious motivation and political motivation are all the same.
Yeah. Well, it's funny to think because, like, from my perspective, I'm like, I don't think of gods in the way that they're thinking about them, and I then am thinking about another god as also not real. And now, but people in this day and age believe in their god as real, and other gods just don't actually exist. And in this, but in 361, people are saying my god is real, your god is real, my god's just better.
Yeah, well, the stronger, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, like, for the ancient Greek, when Zeus and all the other ancient Greek gods were being taken over by Christianity, there was literally a story of Jesus going in person to Hades and, like, fucking shit up.
Whoa.
And, like,
Really?
that's, like, part of, like Christ taking over and Christianity taking over.
I want that to be the next.
So there's, like, a literal story of him
Yeah.
going and defeating, like, their old gods.
They had to tell those stories.
So
to,
like, yeah,
help
he's a
convert
stronger
people.
god.
Yeah.
Like he's beating your god.
Oh
Yeah.
man, I want to make a new figure that just beats Jesus every damn time, and it's just a dog. It just goes woof, and he's just like, ah!
Callie. It'll be the cult of Callie. And then Callie hit Jesus in the face with her tail.
Yeah,
And he was so annoyed that
they're like-
he just went away.
I love it, and then it's just like, and then Jesus did like magic, and it's like, no, it didn't work. And, you know, like- he goes, but he's the most, he's omnipotent, and it's like, it just didn't work.
Yeah.
It's like,
Not on this dog god.
yeah, not on my God.
That would be funny. Imagine being the apostle or whatever, and you're up in like Macedonia, and he's like, and they're like, oh yeah, you think Jesus is so great? Well, what about Zeus?
Yeah.
Zeus is a big fucking deal, man.
Yeah.
Zeus throws lightning and he fucks everything.
Yeah.
How are you gonna beat that? And the guy's like, oh fuck. Well, Jesus goes up to him and like hugs him real hard, and he just goes away.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh fuck, he did that to Zeus.
I feel like the story is more like,
But really, he's big.
This guy's huge. He draws a picture of him. They're like, how big exactly is this Jesus fella? And they like draw a picture of him like with big muscles, big pecs and shit. Like, oh fuck.
oh man, I love imagining the like fireside shit talking of like, nah, Jesus would have like come up with a bat and like smashed
My
Mars
God.
over the head.
My God's taller than your God.
It's so rude.
Just a bunch of ancient people without.
Yeah, what a rude thing to say. Yeah, sip of that aluminum, liquid aluminum.
So, the main thing that Constantine is remembered for is this Edict of Milan that he does in 313. You guys having a
Edict
moment?
of Milan.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
he keeps having my things.
You doing? Yeah, and he's a thief
What?
in the night. He's a godly volleyball thief.
Milan, huh?
Oh yeah. Speaking of gods, I have
Yeah.
my volleyball.
Can you
Yeah.
say what it is? What is it, Zach? You don't know. Why don't you check Wikipedia before?
Take two.
So anyhow,
I have a shirt on.
no, it's not a shirt.
Line.
Yep, line.
What? It's not a shirt.
It's not a shirt.
You-
It's not a shirt.
oh.
Nope. The Edict of Milan was like Constantine's thing that made it no longer illegal to be a Christian. Like you could just get hung, or
Crucified.
crucified.
That's what happened. Dude.
Were
They
people?
didn't-
I guess so.
That was the thing.
When I was researching this, I thought, like, if you were on death row and you were a highly devout Christian, would you want to be crucified?
I don't think they got a choice, man.
No,
I think they
today.
just always got crucified. Oh, nowadays?
Yeah, today.
I
Do you think that would be better than?
think so. People do it to themselves
Just to go
still
out
as
with a
like
bang.
Yeah, just
you
to
go
go
to
out.
those ceremonies in like fucking Argentina. They're like,
Oh, yeah.
today's the day we're doing the thing where everyone who wants to gets up on a cross and nailed to it.
Oh god.
And then it's
Holy
like,
shit.
Yeah,
well,
I want to go to that. I don't want to be crucified.
Some people are really into that, like the cult of like suffering.
The stigmata.
The
people.
the stigmata people.
were you guys doing?
They
Someone
put
was
the holes
doing
in their
that
hands.
in the bathroom. Someone had a nail in the tub.
Oh yeah.
yeah,
Got you
someone
crucifying yourself in the tub over there, bud.
someone was Jason was making the stigmata on his palm
Okay.
with the jalapeno nail.
I was throwing that nail at Zach while he was pooping with the door open.
Yeah.
And
I was trying to talk to you. I didn't want to put a door between us.
Yeah.
you
So
know?
glad I wasn't there for that.
Yeah, I'm glad you weren't
Yeah.
here. Well,
Let's see. So this Council of Nicaea is like every bishop in the area is invited. About 300 of them show up.
every damn bishop in the neighborhood is coming up.
It's like it's in a Nicaea is like a city just north or like just east of Constantinople, and people from Britannia come. Like,
Yeah, they're like-
can you imagine that journey at that time?
It was like a goddamn Christian workshop. They're like, all right, we're going to figure out all this shit. And then they didn't. And then they're like, well, then we're just going to break off from the church. And it's like, well, now you got 6 new churches.
No, I mean they'd be. It's not like the like Protestant Reformation when it's like actual like strong followers. It's maybe there were because there seemed like there was a good enough amount of like these Arian folks, but the vote was 298 to 2 in the Nicene versus Arian debate.
Well, I know they did this shit like throughout hundreds of years
Yeah.
of time to like define Christianity like to the point. Because there was like a lot of loopholes, and they were like every year, they're like, oh, fuck, we didn't figure out.
Can
like,
you imagine losing one of
like-
those arguments and then they're just like, nope, if you want to be a good Christian, you have to listen to this rule. And you're like, but that rule doesn't make any fucking sense to
Well,
me.
dude, the stakes were incredibly high. You mentioned before that how they exiled the Arians. And
Yeah.
something. That happened at every one of these conferences I was reading. It was like all the different sects would get together and they would like read the Bible for a week, and then they'd come back together and be like, no, this is like really what it means. And then the people who just lost the debate were just like banished. Like,
I mean,
just-
they're the ones too who
Yeah.
cut parts of
it was
the Gospels
everyone.
out.
You read it, like you scroll through the Wikipedia page, and then you get to like the results column, and it's just like this guy got sent away, this guy got banished, this guy. It was like that's all they wanted to do, really.
Well,
Just,
they're also like
fuck over the
they're
people
like,
they
well,
disagreed with
Where did they get sent to? Like, did they just go to
outside of
Germany?
the empire.
Like,
yeah,
it's crazy.
Persia, fucking
you'd have to go so far to survive being banished.
yeah.
It's like way worse than being deported today.
Send
Like
them to-
at least, I mean, like imagine you got exiled to Mexico, and you'd be like, oh fuck, I don't know
Finally,
Spanish.
vacation.
Like what?
Beers are like $1 there, right?
I guess yeah. Maybe you just like
Sounds
coast
like
on
heaven.
Yeah, your savings would last you for like 15 years, and
Yeah.
you'd just be happy. Maybe we should exile you, Sean.
Please.
Can we? Can we get an official exile?
Yeah. As long as it's like a real beautiful like potpourri like stamp in clay or
Uh-huh.
like wax, and it's like, yes, you are exiled.
Uh huh.
And then I'll just go away on my cart with my rags and stuff. And
Is there any crime where?
Just a cart full of rags, as all ancient men
Yeah.
bore a cart full of rags.
You're walking down the highway on your way. You're like, I'll leave, but I won't leave fast. You like slowly try to like take your cart to Mexico.
Yeah.
You just have
So-
a sad mule.
there's no reason to rush to exile.
Yeah.
I mean, you gotta take your time. You don't want to sprain an ankle while you're on exile.
Yeah, you don't want to get stuck in your exiled place. If you break your ankle and you're like, oh, I gotta heal, and they're like, no, get out.
Mm.
That is funny that even today, like that's still a practice of just you find people who you don't like in your country, and you're just like, go somewhere else. You know?
Yeah.
Like doesn't that just seem like so stupidly like straightforward? Like it's a fucking ancient foreign policy decision of just like, no, don't like you.
Yeah. Well,
Go to that other place.
I don't think we
and then you go and you're like, what?
we
what do I
can't
do now?
exile citizens at this point. Like, I can't think of a crime where you'd be exiled without being imprisoned. Like, as a citizen, you are like, for better or worse, stuck in the country.
It seems like a bad policy because if there's someone making trouble for you,
All right.
What?
Let's move on to something else.
All
No,
right.
sorry, I just threw up in my mouth a little bit.
Yum. Delicious.
No, but if someone's trying to, if you're causing trouble for some like oppressive regime, and then they're just like, get out of here, and then you go to the other, then you go to the other place. No, that's what I'm saying. That's basically what they do. They're
Hey,
like,
when you're in one of those oppressive regimes and they go, hey, get out of here.
you've been exiled.
Wow. 361.
Yeah, man.
All right.
361. A lot of exiles happening. You know.
Yeah.
That's what my point
Digging a
is.
hole.
So the Aryans get exiled after this meeting, and
topical. It's topical.
And essentially through Constantine's lifetime, like only Nicaeans are allowed to be within the empire. Any other sect, which I think is just Aryans at this point, are not allowed. But when he dies, everything kind of like relaxes again, because his son Constantius II. Constantine has 3 sons. When he dies, he splits the empire up under his 3 sons.
Who's he's got? Constantius,
Constantine the Second,
Constitucius, and Constantius.
Pretty much.
Nice. These are great.
Constantine the Second is the eldest. Constantius the Second is the middle child, and Constans
Wow.
is the youngest.
Hey, my name is Constantine. What am I gonna name my kids?
Yeah.
I'm Constantine, Constan for short. You can call me just Const.
The fourth
Hey,
one just
I'm
would have been Con.
Just call me Big C.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm Constantine. This is my son, Constantine. This is my daughter, Henrietta. Constantine.
Constantina.
Constantina.
A bunch of fuckers.
Yeah. So the eldest gets Britannia to Gaul, essentially. So the whole Western Empire. Constantius II gets the Eastern Empire. And Constans gets the
Confusing.
gets the center. So imagine you've got a line west of Italy is like the Western Empire, east of Greece is the Eastern Empire, and it's just like vertical chunks of the Mediterranean. The youngest Constans gets the center area, which is Italy and North Africa. But he has to have the help of his older brother to run it.
I just imagine triplets that look exactly the same.
Yeah. Hey, we're the Constantine
It's like
triplets. I'm Constans. I'm Constantine II. And I'm Constantius II.
It's the fucking
like-
Brady Bunch.
Yeah.
Constantine just like multiplies.
Yeah.
He just dies and explodes.
They all have
and then-
tiny crowns for some reason and giant beards, even as babies. So
Here's the
in the
story.
West,
But
of
this
a man
is
named Constance,
let's be
who was
clear
raising
here.
up
This
three
is-
parts
this is
of
your,
the Roman Empire.
So this is like 450-ish at that point.
no way.
So
450. I thought it was
sorry,
before.
sorry, 350. 350.
Okay.
Because we're doing 361, so this is just like a few years before Constantius II becomes emperor and then dies in the year we're talking about. So Constantine II dies in an ambush, and so the Western Empire doesn't have a leader. So Constans, the youngest, is like, oh, now I'm in charge of the West and Italy. Because they're connected. But Constantius II is just like, fuck off. I'm the eldest brother now. I should have the whole empire. You're the fucking runt little brother who couldn't even run his own empire without Big Brother's help. And so he's starting to like plot against his own like people. He actually has all of his cousins killed, except for his brother and like 2 cousins survive.
that was so common in that era as to just be a ritual of ascensions of kings.
You're
They're
so
just like,
not happy for your cousin who just got emperorship because you're like, oh shit,
oh
we're
shit,
fucking dead.
We're gonna die.
Yeah.
What a sad thing.
Yeah.
man.
So
Bad Christmas Eves and stuff.
yeah,
Yeah, real bad.
it's like, honey, are we gonna go to the Constantine the second's
Man,
Christmas
really-
party? It's
really-
like last year he killed like my brother and my dad.
Really awkward Thanksgiving all the time.
I don't know if I want to go this year.
What a bummer. You
Ju-
know, Jesus would have not approved of that.
Yeah. Well, that was part of the appeal of Jesus.
Yeah, well, that's why he was an Arian.
They
And
must
think of the
have-
reputation they've got now.
Ouch.
Zing, zing, zing.
Boing, 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 boing.
They went to confession all the time, I bet.
You think?
Yeah.
Like every day?
Yeah.
just like-
I hope so.
I jerked off again today, Father. Wink.
Why is he winking at him?
Through the, I don't know.
They had to go to confession for that.
Yeah.
too.
No.
God, I mean,
So you apologize for that wink.
has
right
anyone
now.
done a
It
skit
made me
where it's
very
just
uncomfortable.
torture to be you're like a priest and you haven't had sex in a decade and just like hot women are coming in like just telling you all their kinky stuff and he's just
Yeah,
like,
the only flaw is that is hot women don't go to church. So that's
there's
why
gotta be
There's-
hot.
So that's
there-
why
No.
That's-
you're fucking
there's
boys.
gotta be some hot women in church.
Like, oh, these boys are close enough.
No, I don't think
They're-
that's why they're fucking boys. Is because there's not enough hot women.
No, it's because it doesn't break the your covenant with God to fuck.
It's a great loophole. That
No,
we've
it
got.
does.
It's a great loophole.
No, homosexuality, from what I've read, is not okay.
No, but it's not considered homosexuality. It's considered pederasty, which is like, I think somehow it's a loophole.
Not really. I think
It seems like it's a power issue more than anything, rather than a fetish. But like,
No, it's not even. It's not any of those things. It's when they busted up the Boston diocese for protecting all of those sexual predators. It was some staggering statistic, like 1 in fucking 10 like people in Boston had been sexually molested.
I have
something.
an opinion. I have a perspective here.
yeah,
Okay.
What if just pedophiles and gays just make better priests, and that's why they're the priests?
yeah, it's like it's like an
Maybe.
inherent trait for like being a better, like raising through the ranks faster.
Maybe.
Maybe, but part of it was there was a guy when that whole thing came out. There was a guy who actually did a psychological like study of the issue and said that it was something about the celibacy vow and the specific laws around it created literally a psychological disorder in the clergy to like see.
Yeah, think
to,
how
like-
crazy you
to,
go
like,
without
not-
jerking off for like a week and a
to not
half.
see with so much guilt around
You don't
your
go- you don't go
sexuality.
crazy?
And,
I'm fine.
you know,
Yeah, but have you ever tried to not do it for a week and a half?
Mm-hmm.
I don't believe you. For
Brian's like I masturbate
at-
10 times a day.
10 times.
Brian,
a
I'm
week.
very humble,
At
and
least.
I'm a God-worthy person.
Oh,
I
you're God worthy. You're worthy of being a god.
yes,
He's worthy of God's
the amount
love.
of jizz I still have in me makes me like powerful.
I don't.
You don't understand. the powers.
women, Mandrake, but I do deny them my essence.
He's,
I have a lot of powers.
He's very virulent.
Yeah.
Yeah, strong swimmers, as they say.
Are you given your powers by God, or are you given powers by yourself? Are you a self-manifesting deity?
I don't think about it. It just happens.
Ah.
You're asking too many questions.
You don't think about what? Your jizz?
Where he gets his powers.
Where I get my powers?
Didn't you just say you got it from your
Yeah, but I was
swollen
asking
ball sack?
whether God gave him
Yeah,
his
but
powers.
then he made it all special talk, and I
You're
didn't
just-
want to take special talk.
I was trying to tie it into the whole Nicene argument of like, are you God yourself, or did someone else make you God?
Oh wow, what a great example.
Yeah.
Both.
This is Brian teaching some ninth graders. So your balls are just bursting with cum. Are you God? Or are you? They're like, what?
Yeah.
Everyone's talking. They're like checking out their schedules at the beginning of the year. It's like, oh, you got Mr. Nolte. He loves to talk about cum and balls and jerking off all the time.
Can I
It's
talk?
fucking weird.
Can I talk about my stuff? About
Yeah. Hit us.
No, don't.
No, I'm
Don't
the host.
Just,
I
don't
said
just
yeah.
say yes because he asks. Make him-
host, please.
Hit me.
Make him fucking do something.
I looked up stuff on Jews and early Christians and how they didn't. Well, this is what happened. They try to get along and hang out, and
And they just didn't.
the bishops were like, no, we need to do our own things. But they're like, but the Hanukkah is so fun, and they're like, fucking get out, go home.
That's how it went.
And it was this guy, John Chrysostom. John Chrysostom.
Uh-huh.
That's what he was named.
John Chrysostom.
He was described as having a large forehead.
I'm glad
And
that
he
made it
lived-
through history.
Yeah. He lived from 349 to 407 AD. And he wrote the 8 homilies, which is like one of the Christian things that are like still read. And it's like, don't hang out with gays and don't do this.
Oh, so
and
he's
that.
the one responsible for like half the bad
Dude,
ideas?
yeah, he started a lot of the bad ideas.
Oh, wow.
So this is when like the Christians and the Jews like weren't allowed to hang out anymore because
Uh-huh.
of people like him. He was like, yeah, it's worse than murder to be gay. He said that. Let's see.
It's
There's
funny
a
how
quote
people
from
are.
something that says, "If a man submits to another man, he is no longer a man and should be driven out and stoned."
Do they mean submit like in wrestling, or is it like
Yeah,
explicit about like?
in some
submitting-
kind of wrestling?
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah.
Well,
Well, that was also like the whole because sodomy was practiced throughout the ancient world like freely, and the whole idea
here
of
we
like
go again.
of like of with what?
I was trying. That was a joke for Sean, trying to make fun of you for like being like that whole argument late that one night where you're just like, the Greeks just had just fucked each other and it like wasn't gay, guys. It was like so awesome.
Oh, yeah.
Like these dudes would just like sleep together and it was so cool. And it like wasn't gay. And it's like,
It's like, well, they had really enjoyable
Yeah,
opinions.
that time that I came in when you guys were just hanging out, and I was like, guys, you know what would be?
Yeah,
you
you're
know
near
what
my
was
bed.
awesome? Ancient Greece, because dudes just fucked each other.
Yeah.
They just oiled up and fucked each
yeah.
other.
But so fortunately, it wasn't gay. They were just Greeks.
Can you imagine?
Why don't we have this
Yeah,
anymore?
Come on. No, I mean it's true, but
Hey, I have something to repute from the previous art contexts.
Oh yeah,
what?
You guys were talking about Constantine
yeah.
and his Christianity. What I read was that he had bishops with him while he was conquering his empire,
Huh.
and that they just happened to be the ones that were like prejudiced against Jews and just like hostile towards Judaism in general.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like the only like Gentile Christians who were. And he's just like, yeah, you guys are fine. You guys are great guys. And they're like,
Well,
kill Jews.
So he
He's
just
like,
had
"Oh."
bad friends, Constantine.
Apparently, the bishops that he had following him were like that.
Uh huh.
So forever after, the Jews are just like, fuck. these Christians don't like us, but all the other Christians
We're fine.
But these particular ones that are now Constantinopolitan Christians,
It's
are,
crazy
like,
to just think
mean.
about the impact that single people can have. I mean, like we.
I'm sure it would have been any sect. I'm sure if you picked one, they'd have something. Be like, oh well, these ones they just hate black people, or these ones they just hate Greeks. So I don't know. I guess
Some random arbitrary prejudice from some guy at the top
Yeah.
who's just
Yeah.
like, man, I got beat up a lot by Jews when I was young. Fuck these guys.
Yeah.
And he
It's
just
just like-
finally gets power as a bishop, and he's like, the Jews are evil. They're
Yeah.
And
evil.
because he has a bunch of people listening to him.
Yeah.
well,
It's like,
yeah,
and
they
you-
believe that they killed Christ,
Right.
And then there was all these other ones who were like, well, it was the Romans who did it, and like, no, it was them. And I'm like, okay,
Well, what I was going to say about sodomy before is that, like, you know, ancient Hellenistic world, not that big of a deal. But Christianity, there might be kind of like more political-ish in the contemporary sort of treatment of the word.
Well, this is the
reasons for
time.
that, like opinion, that strong opinion on sodomy and how, if two men lay together, that's how, because they're trying to separate themselves from that kind of Greco-Roman tradition. And there's examples of that, like over the hundreds of years that these religious debates are happening, like the religions are kind of becoming more distinct based off of those decisions of like, how do we interpret stuff,
Are they just trying to be different? It's like have my twin sisters who are like, if one of them likes blue, the other one can never wear blue.
Yeah.
I know that John Chrysostom, he was actually one of the guys who defined a new definition for sodomy, because at first it just meant like to be in an unfavorable place, and then he's like, no, it just means they're gay.
Huh.
It's like, well, now that's what that means. Okay.
Wait, to have sex in an unfavorable place, or
no,
to
just
be in
I think just to be like in a place of like unsavourable like activities.
Huh.
And then he's like, no, it's to be just gay.
Isn't that like derivative of is the place Sodom like the foundation of that word sodomy, or is sodomy
I'm not really sure.
implies
No, Sodom was,
That was Gomorrah's brother.
yeah.
Is Sodom a person? Because isn't there like a city of Gomorrah?
No, well, that's the thing.
And there's a
is
city of Sodom.
Sodom and Gomorrah are in the Bible, and that's
I don't know.
those are the cities that God destroys because they are sodomizing each other. So I think, I don't know, maybe it's a kind of literary
It
device.
must be the phrase sodomy must come from to be in an unfavorable place, to be in a place like Sodom.
Right.
This is Sodom-y.
Yeah.
This is kind of like Sodom.
Yeah.
This is a sodomy kind of
is
place.
sodomy, yeah.
Yeah. I can see this. This
Oh,
is kind of sodomy.
we should
That's how
we
words
should
are made.
revive that.
Yeah.
Oh man, this is
This place is. Oh man, this place is sodomy. Fuck.
God, this class is sodomy.
I love how sodomy this place is.
That's how words are made, man.
Yeah, dude.
That's the meat of my talks. I mean, yeah, the fucking Jews were just like doing cool stuff, and the Christians were like, oh, I still want to like Rosh Hashanah was like fun last year. I would really like to do it again.
Yeah.
Like, the bishops are like, don't fucking go over there, guys. No, come back. This Christianity.
We
And they're
got
like-
this tree, and
like, we
a guy
just-
sticks presents under it.
because back then it was just like so like
Oh, so you're saying to keep them separate from
Yeah, it was so
indulging in those
fluid.
traditions?
It was
They were
really
just
fluid.
like, no, don't hang out with those guys. They're ugly.
yeah, it was like really
Candles are
fluid. It was
lame.
They're
like
gonna steal all your gold when your back is turned.
yeah, it was like, well, we'll just do what's the most enjoyable in the community, and
Yeah.
if that's what they're doing, then that's fine. So it was just like, well, no, I hate them though. We'll have to figure out a
Yeah.
way to make them not hang out. It's
Uh-huh.
really stupid.
Yeah. I often think about Unitarian Christianity
Uh-huh.
and how it seems to be this radical or this sort of reclaiming of like the radical nature of of like Jesus's teachings.
Uh-huh.
Because one of the big things that I found, you told me to sort of put a backdrop to the Constantine and the edicts and stuff and the councils with like how Christianity was growing at this time. And one of the things that I found, as far as the spread of it, obviously Constantine making it the state religion, or like paving the foundation for that to happen, was huge, because it just became the state religion. And even if people were kind of unsure, I mean, and most of the sort of like feasts and rites and stuff in Christianity are sort of matched up with old pagan traditions. Like, so it was just like, oh yeah, we're still having the same dinner or whatever, but we're doing it for this guy Jesus instead of whatever, Dionysus or whatever. So a lot of it was just translated.
Yeah,
but
it was
one
a
of
pretty
the
slow process,
Yeah.
I think.
But one of the other things was that it was a religion, at least in the way of, the way that Jesus's teachings were being sold, that was very like populist in a way, and had a very populist message. So much so, and like, it's kind of like optimistic of like, Jesus, they say like Jesus was a communist, blah, blah, blah. But in a way he was very like good of the community focused, and all those like good things we associate with like the church, like strong community, giving back, giving to the least of us, blah, blah, blah. Like all of that was there, like in what he was doing. And it was so radically different from the long-standing pagan religions, which were seen as aristocrat religions, because no one has, most common people don't have the economic ability to pay the lavish tithes to the gods that these ancient religions were asking. I mean, like kings would slaughter like 10 oxen. Like, what do you do? How do you commune with God if you're a slave who has no oxen? So Christianity appealed directly to all these people. And we're saying like, this is a religion about you. This is a religion about the low and the destitute. So much so that
It's
there was
a more direct
Well,
connection
it's
with
another
God, maybe.
another way to look
Yeah.
at it is Christianity is a religion of the victims,
yeah,
and
Huh.
the pagan religions were of victorious and idolizing heroes.
exactly.
So
Oh,
it's
yeah.
like, well, there's so many victims compared to the heroes, and
Right.
they're
I mean,
able
the
to
fact
communicate with it.
that the Romans, their whole society was based on slavery. I mean, the ratio between a patrician general who, I have the favor of Zeus because I conquered this province and killed all these people and have all this gold. It's like, well, that's not my God then, right? Because I'm just I'm shitting in a bucket.
Right.
I'm going to go to heaven, though.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So then Jesus comes along and is like, it's okay because you guys are better anyway.
Yeah.
Like, you're fine. So it's this really radical thing that like mobilizes the poor masses. So much so that there's a Greek writer, Celsus, who actually writes a really interesting dissertation against Christianity around that time. And he calls Christianity a religion of slaves and women. But that just goes to kind of show you how, like, what it was targeting and why it spread so quickly, because there was just so much systemic economic injustice in that world order that it was just so many poor people just being like, oh yeah, this is great.
Yeah.
Like, this allows us to empower our communities, right? We create communities around the churches, and that's still true, right? Rather than like, so the church actually has this really interesting civic function where you're like eating with your neighbors and like helping your neighbors in the name of, the religion rather than the Roman state or what have you, or your country. So it becomes this thing that very easily crosses borders because it's teaching destitute communities self-reliance and how to organize. It's really a pretty rad thing.
Rad.
Rad.
Yeah, you got me thinking about it as like that in a world in which you have no social mobility because you kind of live the life you live. I mean, they had maybe more than serfs did a few hundred years or 1,000 years later, but like it's a really hard world, I think, probably to move in. So having this like notion that the world that you like, if you accept your life as it is, and then you will be rewarded in the future for being good. Like,
it gives you perspective that you can just focus on the here and now, and on making your immediate surroundings better.
It doesn't matter that life is awful now because it will be better, because your suffering now actually is probably the reason why you will get into heaven.
But the
will
work
be awesome.
the work of the church and the work of the Christian is still to make life better. You don't just sit in squalor and say, "Oh, well, it'll be great when I die." Like, you try to make it work, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And that's a value that it teaches. It's almost like self-assembly. And you know, there's a really interesting brand of Christianity that the new or Catholicism, I should say, that the new pope kind of belongs to, which is like this radical, like leftist, like religious, like Catholicism that exists in like South America for the same reason, is that South America's contemporary political structure has created large numbers of disenfranchised poor people who find their strength and their community strength through the church. So the church has this very like transgressive, almost communist, like revolutionary sort of vibe to it. There's a lot of intellectuals out of South, like Brazil and Argentina in the 70s, who are also priests, who are like radical, like libertarian intellectuals, which is, and you know, a lot of like the community organizing sort of techniques come out of these Christian ideas of like what resilient communities look like. So it's very much something forged in the crucible of like economic injustice, which is really interesting. Yeah.
You got something for us, or you want me to?
I do. So in addition to that, I thought it was interesting. We touched a little bit on the way the sort of sects were getting parceled out, and I didn't look too much at the difference really between the Nicaeans and I know the difference between the Nicaeans and the Arians because you talked about it, but there's more to it. But I found a really funny story that I thought would sort of illustrate how Christianity grew out of Judaism and then kept growing. So early Christianity was essentially just like Jewish Christianity. It was it's described as an apocalyptic sect of Judaism that was being ministered by Jesus and his apostles. Apocalyptic meaning that
He's a cult leader. He's essentially
he is.
Huh.
And he
so.
actually he taught out of Solomon's temple, the big temple complex in Jerusalem, that was like the heartbeat or the brain, the nerve center of Judaism in Palestine. And so they were a second temple, which is like, if you look at the complex, there's 2 or 3 temples, and they were a second temple sect. It's almost as if, I don't know that much about it, but it seems to me that the Temple of Solomon accommodated every sect of Judaism. There was no strife over like what is the proper way. It was all of them, but there was one key thing that made it Judaism, which was the people had to adhere to the laws of Moses, the Mosaic Code, which is basically the 10 Commandments. And what made Jesus so transgressive was that he seemed to be preaching a version of Judaism that opened up questions that weren't addressed by the Mosaic laws.
Well, he also just flat out declared he was the Messiah.
Yeah,
which
is a big thing.
Which
to do,
is a huge thing, and that if they didn't believe him, then they're like, "Well, you're not," and then it's like,
And he's like, "But no, I am."
And then that's a whole other way to separate Jews.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, that's what I was gonna say. Is that that's what I was gonna get to, is what ends up really defining Christian Judaism or the Judaism being preached by the apostles, Jesus' apostles. Well, first he has a thing. He makes like a proclamation where he says, he gathers all his apostles, or he gathers all of his cult basically, and says, "Hey, I am the Son of God." There you go. And
you're welcome.
Yeah, you're welcome. I'm pretty awesome.
Yeah.
And I want to take the show on the road. He says, I want my religion to like spread out among all nations. he almost calls a crusade in a way, and that's where that tradition comes from, and that's the parallels that the kings and the popes would draw when they were trying to raise troops. Is like, oh yeah, when Christ sent out his armies, blah blah.
Christ had armies?
No, it's a metaphor, but like, so he gathers up his cult and he says, hey, son of God, just kind of figured that out. And I want to bring this message to the Gentiles, which are it's a word for non-Jews. So I want to go out into the world and just have everyone.
There's a bunch of suckers out there.
Yeah, there's a bunch of suckers out there. Yeah, and actually,
slime ball snake seller, snake oil salesman Jesus is so funny.
There's a bunch of doofuses over in that kingdom. We're gonna tell them that when they die, they go to a happy place. We're gonna tell them I'm the Son of God, and there's only one God.
I like the idea that he's like literally running like a
Ponzi scheme.
Yeah, a Ponzi scheme.
He's going into villages trying to sell them Tupperware. He's like, all right, you can make a living.
I got these knives.
Yeah, that's what they mean by community resilience.
Yeah.
Is he comes in and he empowers the slaves and the low people by giving them Pampered Chef products, and then they can throw parties with their friends and make $100,000 a year.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
Easy.
So no, but so what's interesting is he calls that thing and he tells everybody, this is the deal now, and almost everyone abandons him. And then so that's where the 12 apostles come from.
Oh really?
He's got like 12 guys left who are like, we believe you, and he's like, all right.
It's like, oh thank God.
Yeah, he's like, all right.
Because I was going to be hungry tomorrow.
Yeah, you guys are gonna do the work.
Yeah.
So what separates the Christians? They're still Jews, but what separates the Christians is that they believe that Jesus is the Messiah. So they go around telling everybody, we got this awesome friend, he's the Messiah. And as Christianity spreads to Gentiles, to non-Jewish people, these debates start coming up even right away with like the earliest stages of it on whether or not new converts need to become Jews before they become Christians. Because Jesus is basically going to these places with a totally different message, right? Mm-hmm. And they're like, yeah, we want to sign up for that. We like what you're selling. And it's like, oh, well, we're Jews. And they're like, oh, we can't eat pork and we have to chop our foreskins off. Yeah, they're like, nah, I don't know about that. So then they start thinking like, well, if we want to spread the religion the way Jesus wants us to, maybe we got to get rid of the circumcision thing. That seems to be a hard sell for a lot of people.
Is that
like
taken out of? Is circumcision a Jewish only thing?
Yeah.
Why is so many people circumcised then?
I don't know. It's a thing they just do.
Fucking Jewish elites
I know
infiltrating the whole world.
Yeah.
I know it has a...
That's why people oppose it. That's a real reason why people oppose it.
It was beneficial back then for health reasons.
Yeah.
Less likely to get diseases.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's why the ancient Egyptians shaved their entire bodies. They didn't have lice. But they just shaved their whole bodies. Same idea.
So did the Christians not cut their cocks and therefore they got sick more often?
In theory.
Huh.
Same thing with pork. They're like, don't eat pork because they didn't cook it well. So it was like they would always get sick.
And the Christians,
that's why. They're just like, these are just better ideas.
Anything that has to do with don't do, because fucking 2,000 years ago, they're like getting sick from it. And nowadays you don't.
They're all just practical advice at the time.
Yeah.
And now we're like, it's magic knowledge. And it's just like, it's a fucking instruction manual.
Yeah. It's all practical advice.
It's literally like a how-to guide.
Cut your dick skin off.
It's
that
for
shit
dummies
gets dirty. You don't want to deal with that.
Imagine an adulting for dummies. Like the literally like soft cover yellow book makes it to the future 5,000 years from now, and they're like, "This is the sacred gospel."
Yeah,
we need to tie our shoes. What's a shoe? I don't know.
Internet for Dummies is the Bible of 1,000 years from now, or like the one surviving text from our society.
Delete history from porn.
Forget David Foster Wallace. Forget Hemingway. Forget everything. It's just Idiot's Guide to Mac. They're like, oh shit, this is the word of God.
Son, I know you're having a hard time in life, but have you checked if your monitor is just off?
Yes.
Yes, it is often just your monitor is off.
The cult of jobs.
Everything's fine. It's just your monitor's off.
Yeah. Oh man, it's. What were
That's
you?
silly.
Turn it off, turn it on. Turn it off, turn it on. This is how we fix things.
Yeah, well, circumcision was a hard sell.
Yeah.
It was a hard sell because they
Imagine
would go
their
in.
knives at the time.
Yeah,
It's a fucking
they go into the village
hand-hammered-
and they're like, "All right."
thick ass blade.
They're like, "Yeah, we like Jesus. Sign us up." They're like, "All right, take your cock out." And they're like, "Whoa, I don't know about that."
Razor blades and scalpels
So-
have not been invented yet.
Yeah, so
It's a fucking sword.
Well, they kind of have
it's a
actually
fucking
because
obsidian arrow.
because
What are we
yeah,
sawing
obsidian like flint
Is a
was
scalpel.
it gets sharper than you can ever get steel. So if you can make
Yeah,
a
but
good
how many
flint-
people had obsidian flint back then? Was that a common thing
Well,
for folks to have?
I'm sure. I mean, there's a lot of trading going on. There's only a reason Israel really existed was because of trading on the coast. And they have like nothing.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's
Yeah,
funny
like-
because Zach was talking about like, oh, the East is so much better, and I'm like, yeah, but it's also desert. Like, it's.
No, but it's the trading cities. It's the empire of the Phoenicians.
I think it's just that it's older. It's
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
it's just like the New York of the world,
Right,
Of
yeah.
like, oh, this is the biggest city from the longest ago.
Yeah, dude. Fucking
Yeah.
Lydia, all the Greek cities.
Uh-huh.
I mean, if you have Athens and you have fucking like Lydia and like the southern Anatolian cities, you're good.
You're good.
I think one of those cities was the only in the Persian Empire. The kingdom of Lydia was the only satrap that had money. they were. That's how like long they've had money for. They literally invented money
Wow.
to the point where most of the world wasn't using currency.
Funny
and they
thing
had
is,
all
we
the
have
currency.
it and you don't.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
this is now the stuff we use.
Yeah, isn't that-
too bad you don't have any.
Yeah, isn't that funny?
Too bad we have it all.
Yeah, isn't that amazing? Yeah, you guys are trading goats and pigs. We got this fucking gold. Just,
Well, I know that the Greeks actually introduced currency to Jews when Alexander the Great invaded.
oh, great.
The Hellenistic way of life
Uh-huh.
changed the whole like economic
And
structure.
they never got enough of it, did they?
Yep.
One for the Jews. Hashtag Goodyear Podcast.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
Wow.
let's
Well, anyway, circumcision, big issue. So it's so much of an issue that in Christian history, early Christian history, there's a whole chapter. There's a whole incident, rather, a diplomatic incident related to dick skin. And,
Wow.
yeah. So and it's one of the first of these councils that the Council of Nicaea kind of comes from that tradition, like hundreds of years later. So, all the apostles and all of their faithful are having a meeting in Antioch, and Saint Peter and Jesus's brother. Jesus had a brother.
What?
Yeah, Jesus had a brother. His name was James.
no.
Yo, it's real.
Is this a Monty Python movie?
This is heresy.
Jesus had a brother named James Christ. I can't say it without laughing, but
Yeah.
it's true. So Saint Peter and Jesus's brother James, they say,
You know, there was like
They
8
s-
Marys. There's
Yeah,
a lot of
there's
Marys.
a lot of fucking Marys.
And then
What do you mean,
they're
8,
not
like-
the Bible's not detailed enough to know who's who at
They're
points.
just talking about very different people at certain
Yeah, but then
points?
what they did was they
And
just
Mary
made
and Mary and
they just made Mary Magdalene all of it.
all
And
of
Mary-
the Marys. Yeah, they
And
consolidated
Mary Magdalene
the
was
Marys.
only like officially mentioned once, and they're like, "Well, we'll just a Mary's a Mary. We'll just make Mary Magdalene all of them because that makes it more useful to
That's
the
easier to
stories."
read when one person is acting erratically different all the time.
She was just a compound Mary.
What are the
Apparently,
different
yeah.
Marys? Like, what does she do differently that like doesn't make any sense for her?
There was Mary Magdalene, Mary Mother of Christ, right? And then there was wait, yeah. That's,
Wait, so Mary, Mother of Christ, and Mary Magdalene are different people? I don't know Christian history well at all.
yeah. Mary
Yeah.
Magdalene's the
Hey, as our resident Christ expert,
That's me.
as the only one who went to Catholic school.
I didn't go to Catholic
I thought
school.
you did. Oh, you were telling me stories about Christ
There was like,
for one time.
all right, so there was Mary,
Well, I
Jesus'
went
mom,
to Catholic church.
and then there was
Oh,
Mary's
not
sister,
school.
Mary. Mary had a sister named Mary.
Mary had a sister named Mary?
Yeah.
What awful, awful parents.
Yeah, they didn't do a good job of that.
Jesus.
And then there was like Mary Magdalene, and there were 3 other Marys or something. At least one other Mary.
Too many.
And then they're like not given fucking
If
other
the
names.
authors of the Bible like were worth their salt, they would have just renamed one of them and been like, oh, she's actually named Sue.
I know, right?
They changed
Just
everything else.
writing the Bible.
Like,
Sue!
yeah, like, all right, we can't have 4 Marys in this book and they're all the same, like
I kind
different
of want to look it
people.
up.
Probably
to be
made
honest.
sense
I'm
at
curious.
the time. Well, anyway,
Yeah.
St. Peter and James say that the Gentiles don't need to get circumcised. But Paul, the apostle, really, really wants them to get circumcised. And it seems like he has a personal problem with uncircumcised people.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So
Do you think it's that he didn't get to see them pull their dicks out and he was like really self-conscious about how big his was relative to other people?
maybe. Well, that's the best part, and that's what you were saying before of like it's just one guy who like gets the power within that circle of people to be like, no, these are bad ideas.
Yeah.
So there's Paul, and he's like, man, uncircumcised people are fucking gross. He's like, no one wants to see that fucking alien dick.
Imagine the rules of my religion.
He's like, yeah. Ugh.
I found
Uncer-
how many
and the-
Marys there are.
So there's a thing where they're at this thing at Antioch, and Saint Peter, I guess, is like he's on the fence because he's like Paul's friend, but also like Jesus's brother is still around, you know.
Uh-huh.
So there's still like, you know.
Does everyone like treat him like, oh, your brother's dead?
Yeah.
But he was so much
bummer.
better than you.
Yeah, they're like,
Oh,
James.
James is here, but I really miss He
James-
bumps me out because I just think of Jesus and how much I
James
loved
is
him.
not a leader.
Yeah.
James is not he's no Jesus.
All right, everyone, we're gonna there.
Could
buddy.
you imagine?
Sit down.
Could you imagine
Sit down.
rewrite all of the history of Christendom and just our Savior James? And then Jim ascended from the sky.
Ah, James Christ.
Jimmy Christ. James J. Christ.
James.
Yeah, it'd be fine.
Anyway, so St. Peter's on the fence. And the way Paul writes about this is so funny if you remember that he's talking about circumcision.
Uh-huh.
So they're at the thing and they're debating, and then he's like, and then I guess Peter decides to take James's side at the last minute. He like switches over to the anti-circumcision lobby, and Peter is so pissed off. He's like so betrayed. He's like, oh, and then Peter and James, you know, went over those hypocrites. They're just gonna let these uncircumcised fucking gross guys walk around. Not kidding. This is on the internet. This is out in public, and then Peter writes about it from his perspective. This is probably in the Gospels. That's the hilarious part. And Peter's writing about it, and he's like, yeah, we went with the Gentiles don't need to circumcised thing, and it's pretty great. Like, we figured it out. The only one who was really pissed about it was Peter. and we could tell how angry he was because when the uncircumcised Gentiles came into like Gentile Christians came in to like eat with us after the meeting, Peter like wouldn't sit with them. He was like edging out on this on the outside of the party, like, oh, this fucking.
God, they got too much dick
They got
skin.
too much skin on their dicks. They can't be trusted. He refused to eat with uncircumcised people.
Wow.
So that's that's just an example of how kind of like personal and like silly a lot of these decisions.
I wish I had a radar for uncircumcised dicks like this guy seems to have.
Yeah.
Like he could just look at someone and be like, "You
No, he must have
filthy
asked.
animal."
He probably asked all the time.
Yeah.
So that's a thing.
But that's what's funny is getting back to
Hi, nice to meet you. How's your dick?
He's like, "Are you circumcised?" It's like,
I
What?
don't shake hands with uncircumcised. Whoop. He reaches to shake his hand, then pulls it. Oh, circumcised.
Hooded?
Nice to meet you, St. Paul. Oh, hold on. Did you?
Let me see that dick.
All right, take your pants
I
down.
need the evidence.
If you're not going to answer me straightforwardly, I need.
Yeah. It was all just a ploy for him to see more dicks.
Yeah. But that's the thing. The interesting thing though is, that something like this, and then going back to, our whole position of like, they really believed that these religions were literal, and so it wasn't always. I mean, you can look at it cynically like that, like it's just the like hubris of like individuals who are like, nah, that's gross. I want to do this, and like inspiring their flock to like make the world according to their prejudices, but. Also, it's like they are really concerned about getting this stuff right. Mm-hmm. And they're concerned about distinguishing themselves from other traditions. And what's interesting is after that incident at Antioch and the Christians decide, yeah, we don't need new converts to necessarily eat kosher or circumcise themselves, the traditional Jews like double down on their circumcision requirements. Like they make it like super strict. Like this is like their response to it, because they see Christianity as this radical sect. Mm-hmm. So their response to them kind of becoming a more independent tradition is to make their tradition more independent and be like, yeah, no, like we are sticklers for circumcision. And that in effect ensures that they stay a minority, because they're not appealing to all the other Gentiles.
Because their dicks aren't appealing. And they can't get fucked, and so they don't breed.
But all the other Gentiles, basically the reason they're avoiding Judaism is because they don't want
to cut their dicks
off. And the Jews are like, well, that's what we do. So it ensures that they remain a religious minority up until
That's
today.
Not the only reason.
But it's one of the big reasons. It's one of the big reasons in this time period.
I'm sure.
I can see that. Imagine if you like were like, yeah, Scientology's got a lot going on. And they're like, yeah, you got to cut your pinky toe off, and you're like,
not that much. Nah. Doesn't have that much going on.
I think I'll pass.
You got to suck Tom Cruise's dick until he finishes.
Yeah, and you're just like
in your mouth, and you're like, what? Yeah. Guess I'm still.
Would you think about it?
No. I guess I'm still a Catholic. Yeah. But yeah, it's so yeah, circumcision,
huh?
But isn't that interesting that the Jews kind of seal their fate as a minority because they refuse to have the mass appeal? It's a mass appeal decision.
Yeah,
they say people want the Jesus, but they don't want the circumcision.
Right.
But then once they take the requirements of Judaism, and they want to eat pigs. Once they take the requirements of Judaism out of the way, it's like, oh yeah, we accept you. It doesn't matter what your diet is. It doesn't matter what your preference for how your genitals look are. Uh-huh. So it actually helps ensure that it spreads faster, because it's so easy to be a Christian. You don't have to change anything. You don't have to change the way you eat. You don't have to dress a certain way. You don't have to cut your hair. You just like, oh, you can just be Christian. Uh-huh. And that's why it explodes. I think the religion grows like 40% every year or something like that at the time of this Council of Nicaea that we're talking about. This incident at Antioch is way earlier, but was just an illustration of what these kind of like decisions were. But in 361, like that's how fast like the tables are turning on paganism.
Yeah, I mean, it must have been significant if the emperor at the time, who was born a pagan, is like looking at this religion and being like, oh shit, this has like some real power going on. I mean,
well, everywhere he looks at this point, it's like all of the major cities are majority Christian, because it starts in the big cities and then it fans out into the countryside. So paganism actually becomes kind of pushed into the rural parts, to the frontiers of the empire.
Yeah, because
the cosmopolitan centers are where the Christians are like spreading rapidly. Also because there's more poverty in cities. Poverty is more apparent. So, it's a religion of slaves and women. Like,
it's a pain in the ass to like slaughter a goat in the city.
Right.
Like, what do you do with it after you slaughter it, and then you just got to leave it out on your stoop?
You have a goat roast.
I mean,
you eat it.
But you don't have a backyard. It's like,
and also if you're a peasant, you don't have a goat really, unless you're out on like an estate or farm.
Well,
you
isn't
know?
the whole point you slaughter something that means something to you? So it's like everyone has something that means something to them, right?
I don't think so. I think the gods demand specific animals, as I understand it. I mean,
It's like, I am the god of elephants.
Yeah.
I'm only appeased when elephants die before me.
like, fuck, we need an elephant. We really got to please this god.
I am the god of Yeti. Murder them before me.
There's only one, maybe.
We don't know.
We don't know where he is.
The world is awful.
Yeah.
That's-
So after the Council of Nicaea, this is way after, but in the 360s, around the time of 361, as I said before, Constantine actually we were talking about sacrifices in the cities.
Uh-huh.
Constantine actually outlaws sacrifices at temples, because one of the tenets that was decided on when the apostles open Jesus' teachings to the Gentiles by getting rid of the circumcision thing is they say the only requirement for Christians being Christian is that they eat stuff that isn't sacrificed to idols. So now you have the majority religion in your major cities going, man, every time there's meat around, someone like gave it to Apollo or something, and that makes me uncomfortable. I'm not going to eat
And
that.
it's just like, fuck, I want that.
Yeah.
I'm so hungry.
So it's just like, so
So
he's
hungry.
like, all right. So, and he also thinks sacrifices are kind of gross, it seems.
What if there was like a cult that was just like, and we burn all of our money?
yeah.
That'd be cool.
And everyone's like,
It's like,
no.
wait. Can I be on the team that doesn't burn the money?
Yeah, right. Well, and it's funny you bring up money too, is that's what's interesting is, so yeah, he also thinks sacrificing is just kind of like gross and like weird and unnecessary. And he thinks the Christian way of worship is more dignified, where you just have this quiet little moment with God instead of this big fucking parade. And then you like cut the oxen's head off and you're like, and blood everywhere. You're just like, yes, my power. And it's just like, no, we don't want to do that anymore. So he outlaws animal sacrifices at temples, and as a result, the temples lose their daily relevance and civic function.
Dude,
because the temples are centers in the ancient world of tax. People bring, and I think that's why I actually didn't research this connection, but I'm going to make a big assumption here and say that's why the meat was an issue, is because I think the temples might have actually fed people the sacrifice.
Oh, so pagans could eat that meat, but Christians could
Christians
not.
couldn't because it was sacrificed to idols.
Oh, losers.
Right. So that's why they're saying we don't want to eat that meat. So that was part of it, is that, the emperor would give.
Oh, that's their own damn fault then. What are they complaining about? Jesus.
Yeah,
Get
it's
outta
true.
here.
So
It's
they
true.
gotta be like us and not ask questions.
and we can't eat our own
they're Jews, so they love to complain. Ba-boom!
Hey.
So anyway, he outlaws sacrifice, but those temples. So traditionally, because the temples would provide things like that to the public would bring their taxes to the temples. The temples were centers of taxation, and it was like, oh, you're paying your tithe to Athena or whatever. And like that's putting you in good favor with the gods, but also putting you in good favor with the state because you need to pay taxes. Once the temples stop their sacrificial stuff, they start to lose their relevance as tax centers. So that part of it becomes weakened because it's like, well, we're not getting anything from you. Why am I bringing my gold here? And paganism then, like I said, kind of retreats out of the cities faster as a result of that. And I think it's Constantine's son, Constantius II. He oversees some guy. I forget how the story goes. Maybe it's even him. Because I think the emperor in ancient Rome was also the head of the Roman religion.
Yeah.
So he also had the title Pontifex Maximus, which is like the main pontiff. And I think Constantius II just like
rejects it. I'm
Just
pretty sure.
rejects it, yeah,
He like
he's just
kills
like-
the church.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure I read
He
that
kills
too.
the Roman church by not accepting
Yeah.
the religious title.
Uh-huh.
Because, for one reason or another, I don't know.
Well, he's
Maybe
Christian.
he is Christian.
And he's actually Aryan, which is like a
interesting.
bizarre thing. So like his father had exiled all the Aryans. When he becomes emperor, he lets them all come back. And then when he in 358, I want to say, in 361 he becomes emperor. He lets them all back. 364 he gets killed and they get exiled again. Can you imagine being unexiled and then exiled and just like
Man,
back
those,
and
those
forth?
3 years were real nice.
Yeah. Constantius.
So I didn't realize-
he banishes a pope, and so an anti-pope is
Yeah.
named Felix II is in power, but he's not a recognized pope by the Catholic Church, which makes him an anti-pope.
Really weird.
So because he
Anti-pope,
because
how
he
many-
is going by the Nicene Creed, not
I
the
see.
Arian Creed, and Constantius II kicks him out, which is
shit.
crazy. So, but then Constantius dies in 361. Julian comes back, and he brings back a lot of the funding for these pagan temples and things like that. He seems like he's in some way maybe an outsider kind of candidate in some sort of way of thinking about Roman. But he's Constantius's cousin.
Maybe I think what I read is that he was trying to check the power of the Christians.
He's
Because-
remembered as Julian the Apostate.
Yeah, because he goes against Christian
Right.
rules. But that's what's funny is the paganism, the state religion, that seems to be incredible.
He's a conservative. Think of him.
Yeah.
He's literally a
Right.
conservative
He's
in this area.
You're right. But he seems to be think of Constantius, that's such a dramatic moment. You can almost see the movie, right? Like the movie scene where he's just they're like, oh, and you're going to be pontifex. And he's like, no, I'm not.
Pass.
Because I don't believe in those gods. And it's like, okay, awkward because those are Rome's gods and you control Rome. So it's so he just, like you said, he cuts the head off the church by just refusing that title. And then when Julian, so I think Julian, at least what I read is he sees imagine how quickly these Christians have just taken control of every part of civic life. And he's just like, fuck, we gotta put some limits on this before it becomes too strong.
Yeah.
As I think his thinking. So he might not be that into the paganism either, but he kind of seems to
trying to
see it
rebalance.
as necessary to rebalance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Constantine was described as being very, very interested in balance of that the Roman gods and the Christian gods
needed
needed to stay in balance.
Yeah.
And I think Constantius II was much less of a
He just bought it.
he's obviously much less idealistic as an emperor because he murders half of his family.
Yeah.
And then is trying to steal the rest of the empire from his brother when his brother gets killed.
Yeah.
So he I was telling you guys that Constantine the Great dies, his empire is split into thirds. Constantine II is killed in an ambush. Constans gets the whole western and center part of it. Constantine then is kind of brooding, and it's just God damn it, I want the whole empire for me.
Yeah.
Why does my little brother get more than me? And this guy Magnentius is an usurper who ends up assassinating Constans, and so then Constantius gets the whole empire and goes to war with Magnetus to kind of crush this usurper. And Magnetus loses so many times that he ends up just killing himself on the battlefield because he just sees the writing on the wall.
Fuck.
Yeah, he Hitlered himself. You know?
It just God, his morale was so low. It's just all right,
God damn it,
time to call it quits. That's so funny. Yeah, well, I don't have much else to say.
What else you got, Sean?
How are we on time?
This I don't know how to read this. Let's just.
How long are
We've got a little bit more.
How far are we in?
Okay.
I don't know. We're probably like an hour and a half.
Okay.
I was gonna talk about 365. There was a big earthquake. Happened right after that emperor died.
Uh-huh. Julian.
Julian, yeah. So people were like, "Oh, it must have been God was all pissed."
It's sad. Our emperor died.
Oh, so that seals his legacy as the apostate, as the sinner.
And it was July 21st, and it was like at least an magnitude 8 earthquake.
Holy shit.
It's my mom's birthday. She did it.
And
That's a
and-
huge earthquake.
yeah. It was
How do they know magnitude scale at that time? They're just like, yeah, a lot of buildings fell, so it's probably an 8.
There's like
They didn't have
They probably they
seismographs.
weren't measuring, but
Yeah.
we measure now.
there's
we can
some
look
like
at geological
fuckers who
evidence.
show up over there.
I'm
who are
like, oh, this broke this rock, and therefore it must have been this strong.
Yeah,
they-
yeah, yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Wikipedia.
It's
Yeah.
easy. It's easy if you're a geologist.
Yeah.
Yeah. It happened like right on the western like shoreline of Crete because there's only one what's the word for it? Fault line in like that area, and it's where like Crete and the Greek islands like make this curve
Huh.
towards Turkey,
Uh-huh.
and that's like a huge fault line. I didn't know that.
Huh.
And that happened there, and it caused a giant tsunami that hit like Alexandria, the Nile Delta, and Libya, and that area, it like sucked the sea back a shit ton. So people like were going on, they're like, oh,
It was
fish.
so cool.
They're like, there's fish and shit, and grab it and stuff. Just like
And then they just got
just
wrecked.
like what happened in the tsunami in like Southeast
Uh-huh.
Asia, right? People were like, wow, look at this. They're like out on the beach,
Uh-huh.
like, wow, look, the shoreline's gone.
Uh-huh.
Like, ooh. And then, of course, it fucking comes back
Uh-huh.
and killed so many people because of that, because they're all out like fucking scavenging like clams and shit. And I guess
All the clams we can eat.
yeah, and it was supposed to be real bad. And there's actually an account that I found by Ammianus Marcellinus, who was a Roman soldier and like writer at the time. And he wrote about it like right after it happened, which is pretty cool. And I could just read it all, but I guess
Do whatever you want.
And solid earth was shaken and trembled. The sea with its rolling waves was driven back and withdrew from the land. Hence many ships were stranded as on dry land. And since many men roamed without fear in the little that remained of the waters, to go gather fish and similar things with their hands, the roaring sea, resenting this forced retreat, rose in its turn, and over the boiling shoals it dashed mightily upon islands and broad stretches of mainland, and leveling immutable buildings in the cities and wherever else they were all to be found. So that amid the mad discord of the elements, that altered face of the earth revealed marvelous sights. For the great mass of waters returned when it was least expected, killed many thousands of men by drowning, and by the swift recoil of the dying tides, a number of ships, after the swelling of the wet element subsided, were found to have been destroyed, and the lifeless bodies of shipwrecked persons lay floating with their backs or their faces. Other great ships, driven by the mad blasts, laid on the tops of buildings, as happened at Alexandria, and some were driven almost 2 miles inland, like a Laconian ship, which I myself saw in passing that way near to the town of Motho, lying apart from long decay.
Motho.
Wow.
So this guy actually like saw it in
Yeah.
person. He's like, oh shit, everyone's dead. There's
Imagine,
ships on buildings.
imagine how you would like interpret that if you thought of Poseidon as like a personified character of just like, what an asshole.
I
Like, what
know.
a trick he just played on us. Like, be like, here's free fish, everyone. Dead.
Oh, boom.
I know, right?
Poseidon was an asshole in the past. I mean,
It
that's
happened
how he's always
again.
remembered.
Like there was like aftershocks too, and everyone was like, fuck. But yeah, that was right after.
What do you mean by right after? What period? What span of time?
This was 365.
Oh, wow.
So 4 years after.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We ready to roll a die?
I think so.
I think so too. So we got a new number generator that can get us into negative numbers now.
Ooh.
So we're got a range of negative 3,000 to 2017,
And we get B.
and then we
some
hit
BC.
generate,
Little-
and we oh my god,
Oh shit.
negative 1619.
Oh,
1619 BC.
holy
shit.
shit! Well,
That's hard.
good luck, you guys.
1619.
I think we had a-
BBC.
Relatively easy one with 361. I found a lot of information, and I have once again no idea. Every time I find that this is how it goes,
Yeah.
absolutely no idea what I'm going to find.
1619 BC.
BC.
Or
probably
can we get
be-
like 2003? It'd be so nice.
All right. We'll see you in 1619 BC. Bye bye.
Toodaloo.